Hi guys, this is Sai Kumar Kurtivada. In this video, we will learn about Next.js caching mechanism. So in general, whenever we have any of the GET request, by default, Next.js will cache them. So we'll see how this caching will work. Let me quickly jump into Visual Studio Code. Here, I have already created API. Inside that API, I have a users folder. Inside that, we have route.ts. So now what I'll do is, I'll write an export with a sync function, and that function, whatever we are using, I'll use it as get function and without any parameters. So just what I'll do is, before this, I will use something like let data is equal to 0. So whenever I call this get request, it has to increment the data value and send it back. So now what I'll do, I'll just return this particular response, something like new response, and that is nothing but your Next.js response. And inside this response, what I will do, I'll just pass this value, something like json.stringify of, I'll pass the data, whatever the data we want. For example, I have something like counter, and the counter value is data. So this is my data, and I'll update this data by my previous data. That means plus equal to 1. So I'm just incrementing my data value by 1, and I'm sending back to the UI. So it is very simple. We are just incrementing a data and we are sending it back. And how this works in Next.js, as this is a global variable, it has to be incremented for every request until we reload this particular server or rerun this particular server. So now npm run dev and hit enter. Now let me go here and refresh this. You can see the counter is 1. So I have used API/users and the counter is 1. If I just refresh this again, so it is just incrementing the counter value with 1, and we are getting the updated counter value. Till here it's good. Now let me go and hit Control C and just build this application. In Next.js, if you want to build something, npm run and build, hit enter. So it will build your application, and then you can run this build. So instead of running dev means it will run the current development code. Now npm run start will run the build folder. That means whatever the build you gave, that build will be running on top of this localhost 3000, and that is nothing but a production mode. So how it works in the production mode, let me refresh this. You got 1, and let me refresh this continuously. You are getting only 1. It is not incrementing the data. So why this is happening? This is because of the caching mechanism. So whenever you run in the dev environment, cache will not be a problem, but whenever you are running in the production environment, it will always gives the best cache mechanism. So by default, any get request will treat as a cache mechanism. But how to overcome this cache mechanism? Because in this case, I don't want to use this cache. So for that sake, what we can do is, there are many approaches and many cases which can be handled by Next.js. Something like, we can export a constant variable called as dynamic, and this is a reserved constant value. And for this, I am assigning something like force dynamic. So when you assign this dynamic, that is force dynamic, by default the dynamic value will be auto, which is like auto cache mechanism. Whereas I am overriding with force dynamic. That means I am telling that in this particular file, whatever the get request I am doing, please do not cache them. Instead, give the proper response without caching. So that is what I am telling in this dynamic. So let me quit this. And once you quit this, let me run npm run build again. So I ran this npm build again. Now the build has been generating, and it got generated. Now what we'll do is, we will use npm run start and hit enter. Now let me go here and just refresh this. Now you got 1. Let me refresh again. 2, 3, 4, 5 without any cache mechanism. And we are running the build folder. That means whenever you are running the build folder, it is inside our production mode. So what I'll do is, I'll just comment this, and we will go with the second approach. What is our second approach? So let me go here inside this data and export async function, and this function I can make it as get again, and let me use some request parameters. So for example, this is something like next request. So now I'm trying to overcome with the second approach. So let me go with the second approach. So this will be our first approach by exporting a const dynamic value. So first approach, and save this. Now this is our get request. Whenever you are using some explicit request body, or if you are trying to access something from this request, then you will not have any cache mechanism that will be overridden by this get request. For example, I'm just using this request inside this, and I'm just returning the data, same thing, data plus is equal to 1, and I'll return something like new response json.stringify of, I'll use something like counter, where my counter value is equivalent to our data. So that's about your async get with this particular data with a request. I'm not utilizing that request at all, just I'm using for a console purpose. Let me save this, and now let me run this build, npm run build, and now the new build will be taken up, and on top of it I'll try to run the start command. So npm run start and hit enter. Now npm run start and hit enter. Now we are running the same data in our production. So let me go here and refresh. Now you got a counter value. Let me refresh this. Now exactly it is working. Why? Because we are trying to access the request, so it always treats that the request would be updated, so that's why it is not caching anything. For example, let me comment this and save this. I'm not utilizing this request inside my get. So what it does is, let me quit this and open npm run build. I'm building it again, and then once the build is done, we'll rerun this application. So I'm not using this request, then it will be different case. So let me run this and go here and just refresh. Now you can see again the cache is working. That means whenever you are not utilizing any of the request, then cache will work. So the second approach is, if we have a request object which we are utilizing inside function, then cache will not work. So this is the second approach, and let's go with the third approach. Let me comment this, and let me go with the third approach. So here inside this approach, again I'll export the same thing as async and function, and the function name is something like, again it is a get function, but this time I'll not use the requests. Instead I'll go with the cookies or headers. For example, I am writing a console.log of headers. We have headers function which is given by next. You can see here headers from next. So what this does is, it will give all our headers from the request. So we can return a new response, and this new response is same like this. So what I'll do, I'll just uncomment this and utilize the same stuff, and let me comment this. Now let me go here and just put it over here. Now again I am incrementing the same thing with a get, but here I am trying to console headers, console.log of headers, either headers or cookies, anything which will be dynamically changed whenever you are sending any request to the API. In that cases, cache will not work. So let me show you that. Let me quit this and build it again. Now go back. Once after building, we'll run the start command, and now again we are running in the production with the third approach. So let me go here and refresh this. Now you can see it is getting incremented. That means the counter value is getting incremented. It is not getting cached. So for example, let me comment this. Now save this and quit this. Let me open again and then build it again. Now let me run start and go here. Let me refresh. Now you have one. If you refresh, it will be cached. That means always it is showing you one. That means it is not getting updated. So this is our third approach. Third approach indicates that if you are using any headers or any cookies from the Next.js, then it will not cache. So this is also one technique. So let me do one more technique. That is a fourth approach. Let me copy this and comment this. Let me go here. The fourth approach is similar to the same, but there is a difference. What we will do is we will not use headers. Instead, I'll not use get, but I'll try to use post. So what happens is whenever you are using a get, then only caching will happen in Next.js. Whenever you are going with post, put, delete other than get, then it will not be cached. So let me quit this and then open again npm run build, hit enter. Now we are using a post instead of get. So if we are using a post, I can't trigger from the browser, but I can trigger the same API from our postman. So I'm running this build. So let me go into the postman, and inside this post, let me hit enter. Now you got the counter as 1. Let me hit again, the counter became 2. Let me hit again, the counter became 3. That means if you are using other than get method, then also Next.js will not cache. So other than get, if we use any other HTTP methods, cache can be avoided. So this is also one mechanism where you can avoid your cache. So let me revise this. First thing, whenever you are running your application in dev, you will not see any cache problems. But whenever you are running in the production, you will be seeing the cache problem. The next one is if you want to override that cache whenever you are using a get without any request, then you can use this dynamic. So whenever you export the constant variable dynamic with force dynamic, automatically the cache will not work in Next.js. And next thing is whenever you are using this particular get with some request, if you are trying to utilize that request inside that get, then only you can avoid the caching problem. That means with the request body you can try to avoid the caching or request parameter. And the third case is whenever you have headers, cookies, whatever you want to use which are related to the request, then also you will not see that cache problem because that request may change by the end user. And also whenever you are using other than get, like put, post, delete, update, any of these methods, then also this Next.js will not cache your APIs. So that's about your caching. Hope this video gave you a glance and clear understanding of caching in Next.js. Hope you like my explanation. If you like my video, like, share, subscribe to my channel for more updates. Signing off. Thank you.